Hey, what's up there, YouTubers? It's me again, Brian, aka Gamer55551, and I am back with a My 2 cent Nintendo/gaming video for this week, for the week of January 26th to February 1st, where I take a look at some of the stories that caught my attention and give you my thoughts and my opinion on it. And we got 5 to cover, though, including Nintendo releasing their financial report to come out with two of the games that I'm happy that they certainly did very well, at least according to Nintendo's perspective. We also have information in regards of Pokemon Home, which obviously not everyone is a big fan of. And of course, its software responded to a question in regards of microtransactions in Doom Eternal. And of course, we have Stadia information that, well, it gives the impression that it's only a matter of time before Google pulls the plug on that, although we don't know if they will or not, but it does certainly gives the impression that they are probably doing that. And a rumor about a possibility that we could be seeing a return of an old Star Wars game as well that could be coming back courtesy of EA. So we will get to that one soon. But before we get started, we'll start taking a look at a quick rundown on what I view as the quick My 2 cents stories that didn't get as much attention though, but certainly are worth taking a look at. We learned that Konami is currently considering developing a new Silent Hill game, which, while that sounds great on one hand, given Konami's history so far, their reputation, not to mention last year when they released Contra Rogue Corp, which honestly, especially if they brought this to this, even though they brought this to the Switch, though, I think it would have been better if they just remastered Shattered Soldier or Neo Contra instead. I mean, yeah, I really honestly believe that. But given Konami's reputation, not everyone is holding their breath on this one. So we'll have to wait and see. But but right now, not everyone is exactly jumping for joy on this one. We also learned that as far as mobile games from Nintendo goes, they certainly have racked up $1 billion in revenue, with Fire Emblem Heroes certainly racking up the most, with the weakest one being Dr. Mario World, to be exact. And obviously, it sounds like Nintendo probably is not going... We're going to probably see more mobile games from Nintendo, or gacha games and all that stuff. I know mobile games are not going to appeal to everyone. I get that and all that stuff, but given the amount of money that Nintendo's making off of it, though, it doesn't seem like they're going to abandon putting some of their IPs into, say, like, mobile games and so forth. We also had a sort of a mix-up from EB Games in Canada, which originally posted a tweet coming out about Street Fighter V Champion Edition coming to the Nintendo Switch, but then eventually they backtracked on that and apologized that they meant it for the PS4, which, I mean, yeah, it's a little bit unfortunate and all that stuff, but after hearing, and I think I remember hearing about this, that Sony fully funded Street Fighter V for the PS4, it's really not a huge shock. I mean, if they fully funded that game, then it's their exclusive and so forth. Whether you agree with that approach or not, that depends on your point of view and all that stuff. So, yeah, it is a little bit unfortunate. But right now, I mean, there are certainly some fighting games out there on the Nintendo Switch, like Mortal Kombat 11, which honestly is the only third-party game I've seen so far where it became the #1 best-selling Switch game. I think it was in April on the NPD charts, although I could be wrong on that, though. We also learned that the spin-off from the Witcher series, Thornbreaker, is currently out now for the Nintendo Switch. I've heard a little bit about this. I haven't tried the game out yet. I heard it's like a card game, and I've tried the card game on Witcher 3, the Gwent thing, and it just didn't really click with me as much. I might give this one a go, but I'm not really big on the card game part of, in the whole Witcher universe and all that stuff. But nice to see that they're bringing more Witcher to the Nintendo Switch. Here's to hoping that maybe one day, if they announce Witcher 4, that could come to the Nintendo Switch. And though this is still a long shot in a way, and I still think it is a long shot, Cyberpunk 2077, although they still have to iron out the Xbox One and PS4 issues on that one, to be exact. We also now learned that the Outer Worlds is basically now has a release date, and we have both good news and bad news about that one. The good news is that now the release date is March 3rd, which would be, less than a month and all that. The bad news is that apparently it's going to be digital only, and if you buy the physical version, you're basically getting an empty box with a download code in it. So compared to what CD Projekt Red did with Witcher 3 Wild Hunt Complete Edition, this is my take on it, I think it's kind of scummy what Private Division, the publisher of it, is doing with the Switch version of the Outer Worlds. I mean, don't get me wrong, Outer Worlds is one of my favorite games in 2019, but I'm not a big fan of what they are doing in regards of the Switch version. We also learned that Persona 5 Scramble originally was supposed to be a sort of another, like a Persona Warriors game. It's almost kind of similar to what Hyrule Warriors and Fire Emblem Warriors were, but it decided to after they further developed the game, they started to push it more as a continuation of Persona 5, which I mean that's okay, but I certainly would have been down with the idea of a Persona Warriors-like game. And last but certainly not least, I'm sure most of you have saw this on the news about what happened to former NBA Laker, also LA Laker player Kobe Bryant, and the whole helicopter crash and everything like that. I mean, don't get me wrong, that was kind of shocking to hear that happen. I mean, and all that though, and well, apparently 2K game is going to pay tribute to him, I think in an update in the NBA 2K games. And while I certainly have certain criticisms of what 2K does, and there are certainly some criticisms I have for them, I have to say this is a very noble, at least a very noble thing to do, to pay tribute to a iconic basketball player. Again, I'm not really a big basketball fan or anything like that. I never really got into that. I more enjoy watching, football or hockey and all that stuff. But there's no doubt his contribution to the sports world, especially to basketball and all that stuff. And my heart goes out to his friends, his family, and fans out there, whether you were a Kobe Bryant fan or an LA Lakers fan. Though, I mean, it's a very tragic situation that truly happened, though. And I will say, I will at least applaud 2K Games for doing this in NBA 2K20. Okay, with the quick My 2 cent part now done, we'll get started with our first one. And this one has to do with the Star Wars license, or Star Wars in general. Now, ever since EA has handled the Star Wars license, let's just say they haven't handled it in the best way possible. We've gotten 3 Star Wars games from them, 2 Battlefront 1 and 2. One got heavily criticized for being basically a $60 game with little to no content, with a $50 season pass with little to no content. And then, of course, we've heard about, the whole Star Wars Battlefront 2 debacle, the whole loot box controversy, and the backlash, which, honestly, for the record, EA definitely deserved that and all that. Plus the cancellation of a linear single-player game developed by Visceral Games, which they shut down and all that stuff, to basically criticism of basically saying that Disney should pull the Star Wars license away from EA, which, in all honesty, I think that Disney really should reevaluate in terms of the Star Wars license in the first place, especially after giving it to EA and how they handle it, though. But last year, they kind of redeemed themselves to a certain degree with basically Respawn basically releasing Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, probably the best Star Wars game under the EA name. The game was sort of a mixture of a Metroidvania with a bit of that Dark Souls type of gameplay, and it certainly sat well and did very well, and certainly clicked with a lot of fans and all that stuff. Well, apparently it seems as though EA might be, and I do mean might be bringing back what many consider to be a favorite Star Wars games of them, and that is Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic, a game originally released back on the original Xbox and PC, I think like around in the early 2000s and so forth. So, and now several articles have pointed to this one from an article from the site known as Cinelix, Cinellinx, and the report concludes the following quote: "Time to dust off an old scoop, as we've heard word that a new Knights of the Old Republic game remake sequel is in the works. If I can, let me direct your attention to the bygone times of 2015. A lot of Star Wars things were in the air at the times, and we originally reported from no less than 3 independent sources that a Knights of the Old Republic remake was in some form of development. The game industry is a fickle mistress. However, and in 2016, I reported that the game was put on the back burner and was something EA wasn't actively pursuing. It was a bummer and frankly made me look like I was talking out of my ass, no pun intended. At last, this is the way of things sometime until today. Unexpectedly, I've heard an update from 2 independent sources, different from the one who gave me prior information and one who helped me confirm that Ian McGuire, if I'm saying his name correctly, I apologize if I'm not, scoop from last year. This came out of the blue and caught me by surprise, which is the main reason I'm updating now. According to one, the previous mentioned Knights of the Old Republic remake is back in development. My other source is adding that they're saying that they felt it wasn't so much of a remake, but a sequel of sort. It would be a Knights of the Old Republic project that would integrate elements from the first 2 games in order to bring certain things into the current Star Wars canon. Not necessarily a remake so much as a reimagining. Considering the wealth of materials that Knights of the Old Republic that has already been reintroduced to the canon, this doesn't seem like a big stretch to make it work. Unfortunately, that's about all the details I have right now on this project. So it seems like the original remakes have made a return in some form and being retooled. I've heard EA has a bunch of Star Wars projects in various stages in the works at this point. From a Jedi Fallen Order sequel, to Project Luminous tie-in, to something on the Switch. There's a lot going on. From what I've heard, it really sounds like EA has found their groove with the Star Wars license. Unfortunately, I don't know about timing on any of this, but I'm digging in and hoping to have a fresh update soon. So basically, the rumor has it that, at least according to what this person's writing, is that that it appears as though EA may be looking at bringing Knights of the Old Republic. Now, they're saying it could be a reimagining of some sort, so it could be either an actual remake or maybe a Knights of the Old Republic 3. And while that certainly sounds great, there are certainly some questions. Questions like, is BioWare handling it since they handled the first 2? And is it okay to have BioWare handle it? Because lately, BioWare's reputation has been hurt a lot, especially after the whole situation with Anthem and so forth on that. And given how EA has handled the Star Wars license, as I mentioned earlier, outside of Jedi Fallen Order, which proved to be a success, they have not handled it very well. And there's always the concern is, will EA try to shove microtransactions into this game and so forth, try to put recurring user spendings and all that stuff. So there is sort of that concern in it and as well. And the fact that they even mention in this article, the fact that they mentioned to something on the Switch is kind of interesting, because let's face it, as far as Switch support from EA goes, it's been pretty much abysmal at best. Some small indie games to basically just putting FIFA Legacy Edition, in which they really put a roster update and that's it, and doesn't really do anything else. I mean, I have seriously have my doubts. I mean, I would love to see this Knights of the Old Republic game come to the Switch. Don't get me wrong. I mean, hell, I would be happy if they were to say remake, say, Star Wars Shadows of the Empire, or bring Rogue Squadron to the Nintendo Switch. That would be a great game to bring back. But being this is EA we're talking about, I have my doubts on that one. So overall, it would be interesting if this rumor turns out to be true, that we get sort of a Knights of the Old Republic. Hopefully, with the success of Jedi Fallen Order, I mean, EA has learned their lesson and all that stuff, but being this is EA we're talking about, I have my doubts on that one. I'm still very concerned about them handling the Star Wars license and so forth, but we'll see what happens if this is true, and if basically Knights of the Old Republic does really become a thing. Okay, we're going to take a quick break, and when we get back, we're going to get to part 2, and we're going to talk about basically Stadia responding to, well, a lot of people basically are losing their patience with it. So, and it looks like Google sort of respond to it recently. So we'll take a quick break, and we will be right back. Okay, and we are back with part 2 of our My 2 Cent video. And for this one, we're going to be talking about Stadia, which, let's be honest, Google Stadia has been kind of a laughingstock for a lot of people in the gaming world. What was once promoted as this idea of streaming games off of like any device and all that stuff has been met with a lot of hurdles and issues. A lot of people view it as basically you're paying $130, the so-called premium edition, for basically getting access to a beta, to the fact that some of the comments they made kind of threw developers on the bus, like it was their fault that it didn't offer the 4K that supposedly Stadia was supposed to be promising. And well, the basically radio silent for a lot of people has kind of given the impression to some degree that it almost sounds as though Google may choose to abandon Stadia altogether. And well, recently, Google has sort of responded to some of this to a certain degree, especially on their Reddit posts, but they've also updated Stadia with basically bringing over 2 games, I think, that you can, download for free if you're part of the Stadia Pro member. From an article on Destructoid, it reads that, quote, Stadia owners eager for news about the streaming platform will be pleased to hear that 2 new games have been announced and will be arriving for Pro subscribers in February. The first title is a puzzle game, Gis, Gylt, one of the few games specifically designed as a Stadia exclusive, though. The second one is 4A Games' first-person shooter RPG, Metro Exodus. It says that, quote, this announcement comes in a week where several articles, such as the one piece from Vice, has called out the streaming service for its less than stellar startup, and the Reddit thread highlighted by Kotaku UK shows Stadia adopters are displeased with both the service itself and the developers' communication patterns. And just to give you an idea, according to the Reddit post, the person has basically highlighted several problems that Stadia has had, though. Basically, it reads that Stadia has officially gone 40 days without a new game announcement release, feature update, or real community update. It's been out for 69 days, and it's time that we demand better. Now that everyone's renewal date is approaching, I think it's time we outline the issues and attempt to get some sort of response from the Google team. Basically, some of the things are basically as expected. There hasn't been any further updates in January after the 120 games mystery bonsai, other than February's Pro games, which we still don't know, but we know what they are. Still supposedly 2+ months out until 4K on browsers, any assistant functionality at all, and the wireless controller functionality advertised. 120 games coming, but none revealed so far. Pixel phone remains the only Android phone with Stadia functionality. Still no mention of ISO support. Still no mention at all of Stadia base. Still no mention of family sharing. Still no knowledge that they've read or listened to the community or plan on better their communication model. Daily updates, scrap for weekly updates, scrap for bi-monthly updates. And it's worth pointing out that this post has certainly received a lot of support, and this has led to a response from this has led to a response from Google itself, which reads, quote, "Hi everyone, from the community manager. Thanks for taking the time to write out your thoughts, and don't worry, I'll make sure this post doesn't get removed. All the concerns you brought up to the table are completely valid, and I understand where your frustrations are coming from. Nobody likes to be left out in the dark. While I don't have product update to share right now at the second, I can promise you that I've been and will continue taking feedback posted on to Reddit, Stadia, and other channels like the Stadia community forum back to the Stadia team. As always, thank you for your patience. Keep those notes coming. I'll be jotting them down as they come in." So you call that a PR response or anything like that, but that's their response to the whole situation so far. And honestly, Google needs to do something big time with Stadia and really start getting their act together. I mean, right now, as I've said this before, and I'll probably say this again, Project xCloud from Microsoft is apparently garnishing buzz so far in a positive way, and people are sort of looking at that, not to mention the possibility of NVIDIA's beta, sort of GeForce Now and all that, but Google really needs to fix this big time. What's going to be interesting is when their subscription for these Stadia Pro comes up, I'm going to be interested to see how many of those people are going to actually renew their subscription. Are they going to really do that, or are they going to truly protest against what Google's doing and not renew it at all and really possibly hurt Stadia even more? I mean, already Stadia's reputation has been pretty bad, and so far Google hasn't done anything whatsoever. And this comment, even if this person is just doing their job and all that stuff, and I'm not blaming this individual and all that, it still doesn't give confidence in the service. And I still wonder if it's going to survive 2020. I mean, that's really the thing. Could Google really turn this around? Because they have to do something soon. Because if they don't do something soon, I mean, if Project xCloud comes out and that does better than what Stadia does, I could see them joining the graveyard of other Google ideas that never really took off. I mean, the thing is that Google needs to do something soon, because right now Stadia has not gotten the greatest response and the greatest reputation, and this recent response to this thread is, I mean, it's only a matter of time before a lot of people lose patience and say, screw it, I'm not renewing my Stadia Pro subscription. There's no point if Google's not going to do anything about it. So overall, it's more headaches for Google with Stadia, and if they don't do something soon, then I wouldn't be surprised if Google kills off Stadia for good and decides to forget about even Stadia even existing and so forth. But Google needs to do something soon. I mean, really soon, if they want Stadia to survive. Okay, we're going to take a quick break. When we get back, we're going to get to part 3, and this one has to do with its software responding to a comment in regards of microtransaction in the upcoming release of Doom Eternal. So we'll take a quick break and we will be right back. Okay, and we are back with part 3 of our My 2 Cent video, and for this one we're going to be talking about in regards of Doom Eternal and a question in regards of the whole microtransaction situation. Now, Doom Eternal, in my opinion, is one of many big games I'm looking forward to in 2020. Sequel to the 2016 Doom, which was a remake of the original Doom. You know, the fast-paced, over-the-top first-person shooter that it was, and this is definitely on my radar as well. We also learned last week some information in regards to the fact that it will be getting a brand new mode, I think Beyond, it's a little bit beyond Nightmare mode, and kind of takes a similar approach to like Dark Souls in a way, where basically it's either you lose, you get only one life, you lose, it's back to the beginning, which it's going to be great for some, but going to be frustrating for others. And we learned that the Switch version, basically, while there is going to be delay, there's not going to be a huge delay or anything like that. But one of the questions that kind of popped up on Facebook has been about in regards of microtransactions. Now, I'm sure most of you are aware, Fallout 76, though, there was the whole microtransaction debacle of that one. Putting aside the fact that the game did not launch very well, it sold poorly, then we had the whole issue with the canvas bag, then we had the whole issues with the Atom store, where it turned out that they backtracked on the claiming that the microtransactions were going to be just cosmetics to actually items necessary to be used. It really had hurt Bethesda's reputation. And there were concerns about this in regards of Doom Eternal, considering that the microtransactions were used in Wolfenstein Youngblood, and that did not sit very well with a lot of folks. Well, id Software responded to this, and this is what they had to say. And several articles have posted this out, but this was in a response to an article on. This was a response to a comment made on Facebook, and the creative director Hugo Martin said this, quote, "Doom Eternal is a $60 game. Not a free-to-play game or a mobile game. We are giving you a complete experience with no store, just like you expected." Now, assuming this is correct and not a PR stunt or anything like that, I would say, thank God. I mean, I think a lot of people, in an age where a lot of video game companies are shoving microtransactions and loot boxes into their games, or trying to push for the recurring user spending, though, it's nice to hear, if what he's saying is true, though, it's nice to hear that you're getting a full $60 experience in the game. Now, I don't have a problem with DLC entirely, though. It depends on how the DLCs are being handled. If it's handled in the way like Witcher 3 Wild Hunt was handled, then I'm willing to accept that and all that stuff. So as far as DLC goes, depending on how it's handled, though, depending on how well it's handled, though, I'm willing to accept that, but I am not a big fan of the idea of putting microtransactions or loot boxes in a $60 games. And if what id Software is saying is true, hopefully this means that when the game comes out on March 20th, people won't have to worry about the whole, do I have to pay money to unlock this or that or anything like that. And it does sound like Bethesda's kind of stepping away from it, especially after the backlash they suffered from with games like with the whole situation with Wolfenstein Youngblood and, of course, Fallout 76. So this is certainly very encouraging, though. I will admit there is some concern that Bethesda could pull what Activision pulled with Crash Team Racing, where after the game came out, they then put microtransactions into the game. So there is that concern, though, but right now, I'm kind of taking a wait-and-see approach on this. But overall, if what id Software is saying is true, and they stand behind that, though, I think that's great. I think that's great. I'm glad that if they're saying it is true, that Doom Eternal will not have microtransaction, and I'm definitely looking forward to picking this one up, not only for the PS4, but also for the Nintendo Switch. Yes, I'm aware the Switch version may not appeal to everyone and so forth, but I still going to pick it up for the Switch as well. I did enjoy the original Doom on Nintendo Switch and thought that was not a bad port, especially how Panic Button was able to handle that version. And I definitely have faith with Panic Button handling Doom Eternal. So overall, like I said, great that, if what they're saying is true, that there won't be any microtransactions or any loot boxes in Doom Eternal. Okay, we're going to take a quick break. When we get back, we're going to get to part 4, and this one has to do with in regards of Pokemon Home, the new feature for the Nintendo Switch that supposedly, is their version of, Pokemon Bank and so forth, and how not everyone is pleased with it. So we'll take a quick break, and we will be right back. Okay, and we are back with part 4 of our My 2 Cent video, and for this one, we're going to be taking a look at Pokemon Home. Now, I'll be honest with you, I'm not really a big Pokemon player. I've been playing a little bit of Pokemon Sword and Shield, and while they are certainly enjoyable games indeed, I'm not the hugest Pokemon fan out there. I never really got into the series as much as, say, other folks have, but there's no denying the fact that there is an audience with it. And lately, some decisions that Game Freak has made in regards to Pokemon, well, let's just say it hasn't sat well with everyone. Although, despite the controversies, it doesn't seem as though that has stopped Pokemon Sword and Shield from being successful so far. And now Game Freak has announced, and the Pokemon Company as well has announced, Pokemon Home, which is kind of similar to Pokemon Bank, which is basically, I think you can put your Pokemons in there and trade them with other people and so forth. And they have announced the features and what you could do with it and all that stuff. And while some decisions some people like, others are not really a big fan of. From an article on GameSpot, they basically point out a big sort of FAQ of what Pokemon Home is, and they talked about how it's basically a cloud surface that you can store your Pokemon you capture and move them between titles. They have other functionality as the ability to trade Pokemons and so forth. As far as how much it costs, basically they'll offer a basic and a premium edition. The premium edition, basically you have 3 options. You can pay $3 for 1 month, $5 for 3 months, or $16 for a whole year, which they said is slightly less than the price of a Nintendo Switch online subscription. And basically what they have here is from moving Pokemon to the Pokemon Bank. It's not available in basic, but it'll be available in premium. Number of Pokemons that can be deposited. Basic, you can deposit 30 Pokemons. Premium, you could deposit 6,000 Pokemons. Number of Pokemons that can be placed in the Wonder Box at once. Basic has only 3. Premium has 10. Number of Pokemons that can be placed in the GTS at once. Basic has 1 Pokemon. Premium has 3 Pokemons. As far as room trading goes, basic you could participate, while in premium you could participate and host. And finally, judge functionality. It's unavailable in basic, but it is available in premium. One thing is that, quote, you don't need basically the Nintendo Switch Online. It does say that Pokemon Home is a separate service from Nintendo Switch Online, so a subscription for one does not grant you access to the other. You don't need to have a Nintendo Switch Online membership to use Pokemon Home, but you do need a Nintendo account, which can be created on Nintendo's website. However, a Switch Online subscription is required to use online features in Pokemon Sword and Shield. So basically, if what they're saying is true, you don't need Nintendo subscription Switch Online to use Pokemon Home. As far as what is compatible to Pokemon Home, they have right now basically the Pokemon Bank from the 3DS, Pokemon Sword and Shield from Switch, Pokemon Let's Go Eevee and Let's Go Pikachu from the Switch, and Pokemon Go, but that's not available yet, and they're saying that it will be implemented sometime in the future. In terms of which features will be available between the mobile and the Switch version, basically on the Switch version you can move Pokemons with Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu and Let's Go Eevee and Sword and Shield, but you can't do that in the mobile version. Both versions, you can move Pokemon with Pokemon Bank. Both versions, mobile and Nintendo Switch versions, you can judge Pokemon. As far as trading Pokemons go, trade Pokemons, it says here, basically according to them, you can't do that in the Switch version, but you can do that in the mobile version. Receive mystery gifts, can't do that in the Switch version, but receive it in the mobile version. Check battle data, you can't do that in the Switch version, but you could do that in the mobile version. Check news, you can't do that in the Switch version, but you could do that in the mobile version. Exchange Pokemon home points for battle points. You can do that in the Switch version, but you can't do that in the mobile version. So we'll see. Maybe they'll change some of this stuff around. But I mean, I guess the one bright spot I could think about this is the fact that you don't have to use your Nintendo Switch subscription or the online service to use Pokemon Home, which I think on one hand that's great, but not everyone seems to be happy about this, especially paying $16 for a whole year to use the whole Pokemon Home, the whole trading and all that stuff. Some people may be okay with this, but some of the response has not been, has not exactly hit well with everyone, though. Again, I'm not really a big Pokemon fan. I'm not the big, I gotta catch every Pokemon out there. If I catch it, I catch it. If I don't, I don't. But for some, it is. So overall, right now I will say it's interesting. I like the idea that you don't have to use a Nintendo Switch online service to use Pokemon Home, but I could see some areas where some fans, particularly Pokemon fans, may not be happy with this, though. Whether it truly takes off or whether it doesn't remains to be seen. We'll find out when it launches in February 2020 to see what happens to Pokemon Home. Okay, we're going to take a quick break, and when we get back, we're going to get to our fifth and final part, and this one has to do with basically Nintendo releasing their financial report. So we'll take a quick break, and we will be right back. Okay, and we are back with our fifth and final part of our My 2 Cent video for this week. And for this one, we're going to be taking a look at Nintendo's financial report. And they recently released their financial report for this week. And apparently it seems as though the Switch certainly did very well. The holidays certainly were nice to Nintendo indeed. Although several articles have pointed this out. The first one is in terms of their dedicated video game sales unit. As of right now, the hardware, they have sold about 52.48 million units. Basically, this combines the Switch and Switch Lite, but according to Destructoid, in terms of the Switch Lite, which hit the shelves in September, it reads, quote, "This newly mobile-only model of Switch contributed to 3.24 million sales in the third quarter. The Switch Lite currently sits at 5.19 million lifetime sales. 1.95 million of those sales came around launch when Nintendo's second fiscal quarters were drawn to an end. This also means that Nintendo winded up 7.57 million sales of the original Switch last quarters." And they're saying that is a strong showing. It also warrants that Nintendo projects the Switch will end with a 19.5 million sales for the financial year. For comparison, the Switch netted 16.95 million sales during November 2018 fiscal year and 15.05 million sales in its 27 fiscal years. It's already at 17.74 million this year. It's third year on the market. Is the Switch most successful, at least from a hardware sales perspective, and it got there in only about 9 months. It's also worth pointing out it has overtaken the original Xbox One. And while 52.48 million is successful, it hasn't catched up yet to the Nintendo 3DS, which sits at 75.71 million units sold, but I have a feeling it will catch up to it though. whether it will catch up to, say, like the Wii, which is at 101.63 million units sold, or Nintendo 3DS, which is 154.2 million units, or the original Game Boy, which is at 118.65 million units, remains to be seen. We'll see if it can truly catch up to the sales number, catch up to how many units they sold, if they could catch up to the Wii in any way. But it certainly has overtaken the Super Nintendo, the GameCube, the Nintendo 64, and certainly the Wii U, though. It has yet to overtake the original NES at this time, though. As far as the best-selling games, according to Nintendo right now, we have Mario Kart 8 Deluxe at 22.96 million units sold. It's almost getting close to 31 million units. Super Smash Bros. Ultimate at 17.68 million units. Super Mario Odyssey at 16.59 million units. So The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild at 16.34 million units. Pokemon Sword and Shield, and this is both of them combined, at 16.6 million units sold. Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu and Let's Go Eevee at 11.76 million units sold. This is both of them combined. Splatoon 2 at 9.81 million units. Super Mario Party at 9.12 million units sold. New Super Mario Bros. U Deluxe at 5.85 million units. It's pretty impressive for basically a remastered version of the original Wii U launch titles. And Luigi's Mansion 3 at 5.37 million units sold. That's also very surprising, considering that I always thought Luigi's Mansion in general was kind of sort of like it had its fan base, but not a really big fan base. But apparently the game did very well for Nintendo, though. I mean, hopefully this opens the door to the idea of maybe they'll do maybe some story DLCs for Luigi's Mansion 3, or maybe they'll remake the first or second Luigi's Mansion, maybe for the Nintendo Switch, or maybe we get maybe like a Luigi's Mansion 4. I mean, I would definitely be down with that. Like, imagine if they had it, and I'm just throwing something out there, have like Luigi goes into like New Dong City, and it's been taken over by ghosts or anything like that. Again, I'm just throwing something out there. Doesn't mean it's going to happen like that or anything like that. But to see Luigi's Mansion 3 on there is actually very impressive. On top of that, apparently, although these games didn't make it into the list that I mentioned from their sales data and all, apparently Astro Chain and Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3, The Black Order, did very well. From an article from Nintendo Life, it reads that, quote, that both of them surpassed 1 million sales. It says, quote, last summer, Switch owners were treated to two particularly interesting Nintendo-published exclusive: Platinum Games' Astro Chain and Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3, The Black Order, from Koei Tecmo. And it's now been confirmed as of December 2019, both games have managed to surpass 1 million sales. Astro Chain has sold 1.3 million copies, while Marvel Ultimate Alliance 2 is just behind with 1.2 million copies sold. Both figures include physical and digital sales. Earlier this month, Astro Chain's director revealed that the game has sold above expectations. This could be one of the reasons. So perhaps this news was to be expected from Platinum's release. Earlier today, Nintendo released an update of their top 10 best-selling games on the Switch. So to see Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3 and Astro Chain do very well is definitely nice. I mean, Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3 was definitely a fun game, even though it has no connection to Marvel Ultimate Alliance 1 or 2. Here's to hoping we see a sequel to that game, and hell, I mean, if they team up again, maybe they'll do an X-Men Legends 3. I'm sure a lot of people would like to see that. Astro Chain, I'm very happy to hear that this one did very well. This was definitely one of my favorite games of 2019, and definitely a must-own for the Nintendo Switch. I'm hoping this means that Platinum and Nintendo will continue to collaborate with each other. I mean, I understand Platinum wants to do their own thing. I understand they want to self-publish their title. I don't disagree with them on that, although some people do have concern with them, working with Tencent, with China, and given the whole, Activision, Blizzard, Hearthstone debacle that was and all that stuff. But we'll see how it is. But I do like to see them collaborate with them. Hopefully, we'll hear more about Bayonetta 3. I'm definitely down with an Astro Chain 2 if that ever happens. And then, of course, there were rumors about the whole Wonderful 101. Be very curious how they would pull that off on the Switch, but I definitely would love to see that come to the Nintendo Switch. With all this reports of what games did very well, not to mention Astro Chain and Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3, there is one area where Nintendo sort of, during their financial report, responded to, and that is in regards of a Switch Pro or Switch 2. I'm sure most of you have heard the rumors. We heard rumors last week about Nintendo working with NVIDIA on a new chipset based off the Vola and all that stuff. We've heard rumors about, the Tegra X1 Plus and all that. Yet, despite all those rumors floating around, it seems, at least according to Nintendo, it doesn't look like we're going to hear anything in terms of any new hardware, at least for this year. Again, from Nintendo Life, it reads that, quote, despite ongoing rumors about a Pro Switch model arriving at some point this year, Nintendo hasn't said anything about it. If it does exist, though, don't expect it to be released anytime soon. During the company's latest fiscal results briefing today, Nintendo's president said there were no plans to launch a new Switch model in 2020. This is what they had to say, quote, regarding Nintendo Switch, we believe that it is important to continue to communicate the appeal of both Nintendo Switch systems and expand the install base, though. Please note that we have no plans to launch a new Nintendo Switch model during 2020. As expected, Nintendo will instead focus its appeal on existing lines of Switch system. This includes the original model and Lite model, which were launched in September last year. Nintendo does not believe it has maxed out sales of existing models yet, with their following chart illustrating minor boosts across all regions with the Switch when the Switch Lite was released. He also continued, we feel that we have not yet fully committed to the special features and appeal of Nintendo Switch Lite, so we will continue to address this going forward. So, unfortunately, it does sound like if what Nintendo is saying is true, it doesn't sound like we're going to be seeing a new Switch at this time, which, I mean, I'm not losing really sleep over this in any way and all that, but I still believe that at some point down the road, I don't know when it will happen, but I do believe that Nintendo will probably do like a Switch 2 or Switch Pro at some point, though. It doesn't sound like we're having one right now. And you know what? Anytime someone claims that they have information that Switch Pro is happening and all that stuff, take it with sort of a huge grain of salt or anything like that. So does that mean that a Switch Pro or Switch 2 will never happen? I don't think so. I think it will eventually happen. It just doesn't sound like we're going to be seeing one anytime soon, which is fine by me, though. I'm currently happy with the Switch I've had. I had mine since March of 2017. I believe that's when the Switch came out. The one thing I do have to say is that although this is certainly good and all, I am curious to see what kind of position the Switch will be in once the PS5 and the Xbox Series X comes out. As we all know, both those systems will be out during the holiday of this year, and it's going to be really interesting to see what position Nintendo would be in. Will they be in a bad position in any way? Will they still retain a good position? Will third-party studios still support the system? And all that. I mean, a lot of people think that there are some out there who think that the PS5 and the Xbox Series X will hurt the Nintendo Switch. And while that is always a possibility, there's also the possibility the Switch could end up like what happened with the Wii, which, despite the PS3 and the 360 being more powerful than the Wii was still able to hang on itself, be able to handle itself on its own, and manage to sell about like 101 million units. Although some would say some of that is based off the casual market, which is possibly true. So overall, obviously, fourth quarter for Nintendo was really good. Switch sold about 52 million units sold, and it's sort of creeping up to the Nintendo 3DS, which I feel at this point it's time for the 3DS to retire. I think, given where the Switch is right now, I think it's time that Nintendo does that. But again, that's my take on the situation. Luigi's Mansion 3 was very successful, and that's certainly really good indeed. Astro Chain and Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3 certainly did very well, and hopefully we'd like to see more entries in that series going forward. And of course, we also learned that there's no plans for a new Switch model at this time, or at least for this year. We'll see what happens next year, but for now, it doesn't sound like it's happening. So overall, very good. Definitely, Nintendo must be very pleased with where things are right now, how they are going into the first quarter of 2020. It's going to be really interesting, and it's also going to be really interesting to see what position the Switch is going to be in once PS5 and Xbox Series X comes out. Okay, this concludes my 2 cent video for this week. And again, these are my opinion. What are yours? What are your thoughts about the rumors about EA doing a Knights of the Old Republic game, possibly a sequel, remake? Are you pleased with this? Would you love to see them do a Knights of the Old Republic game? Or are you a little bit too concerned, still have some concerns with EA handling the Star Wars license in general? What do you think about the situation with Stadia and all that stuff? And the response they give, and how the community on Reddit is not happy with the situation right now. Do you think Google can get Stadia back on track, or do you feel like it's only a matter of time before Google pulls the plug on Stadia? What are your thoughts about the creative director of Doom Eternal's response to him saying that there is going to be no microtransactions in Doom Eternal? Are you pleased with this response? Do you believe that there won't be any microtransactions? Or are you concerned that Bethesda might do what Activision did with Crash Team Racing, where they didn't have microtransactions at launch, but then decided to put it out there later down the road? What are your thoughts about Pokemon Home? Do you think it's worth the $16 for a whole year in any way? Do you think it's a ripoff? Do you think it's a good thing? Do you think it's a bad thing? Are you planning to use it at all, or are you planning to skip it altogether? And what do you think about Nintendo's financial report, though? Are you pleased with the Switch doing very well? Are you surprised that Luigi's Mansion 3 made it onto the top best-selling games for that quarter? Do you think that with Astro Chain and Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3, the Black Order, doing very well, do you think that Astro Chain, we could see a sequel happen to Astro Chain, or maybe a sequel to Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3? And are you surprised that Nintendo has no plans to release a new Switch model this year? Are you surprised by this? Are you not surprised by this? Do you agree with what I said in this video? Do you disagree? Do you have a difference of opinion? As always, sound off on the comment section below. Let me know what you think. And if you like this video, I hope you hit that like button. I would appreciate it. And I hope you do subscribe to my YouTube channel. If you do, make sure you hit the bell icon for notifications of any new videos I put up. Also, feel free to share this video if you want to, and feel free to donate to my channel if you like. You can do it through PayPal Me or Patreon. Links will be in the description of this video, and I will see you again next time when I do another video. Hopefully that will be soon. Until then, from Southern California, wish you all a good day then. Bye!